Welcome back to A Couple Games YouTube channel. I'm Zach.
And I'm Michelle. In this video, we are going to go into our early board gaming days, what drew us into this hobby, basically how we got started, the games that we really liked and kind of sucked us in, and obviously kept the shelf growing.
Yeah. So, how do you want to get started?
Well, I was thinking that I would first kind of ask you, just right off the bat, what game, in your opinion, do you think sucked me in or really got me into playing more games?
That's a good question. So, early on, I would probably say Catan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when we were in college, and dating and all that, when we first got engaged. But after that, I would have to say, I think Dream Home.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I don't know what I was looking at. I was looking at a different game. I was looking to get a different game off of a website, and I don't know if I just scrolled past Dream Home or something. I was like, Michelle's really into home decor. It's like anytime that I wanted to buy a board game, I had to let Michelle buy some home decor stuff or something like that.
Like seasonal,
Yeah.
whatever the season was. And it was a little bit, I guess it was kind of newer into when we had just got our house.
Yeah.
So I was more into getting things for each room and decorating, to make it look like we live here and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of part of it.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just stumbled across this game, and it's about building your dream home and what rooms go inside of it, what decor can you put in those rooms, and this is the game for Michelle.
No, that game definitely stands out. I was going to ask how you came across it. Where did you even buy it from?
I bought it from Cool Stuff Inc., which I don't buy stuff from them anymore because I don't know. They're some company that's run out of Orlando or something like that. But they used to be the sponsor of Dice Tower, and so that's how I would get discount codes from listening to Dice Tower. And so, yeah.
No, I mean that's a good kind of start because I was slower to get into the hobby than Zach was. Mm-hmm. He definitely was the one initiating buying games, looking up new games, watching YouTube videos, reviews over games. And I was just kind of oh, that's cool. I mean, you spend a lot of time looking that up, and if he asked, I would play games with you, when you're hey, I think we should try this or try this. There were very few games that I turned down.
Yeah. Our shelf was much smaller then, so it was, kind of curated it towards what it grew because I wanted to curate it more towards what you would play with me and stuff, but we can kind of get into that. I had a question for you though. What was the first game you played? Because we both grew up playing, Monopoly, all those traditional games, right? And card games, stuff like that. But what was the first game you remember being different? When you played it, you're I didn't know board games could be like this.
Growing up?
Growing up or later, it doesn't matter.
That's tough. I mean, growing up, I just played the typical, Shoots and Ladders, Monopoly, checkers. I did play backgammon a lot with my dad.
Yeah. You want me to... I can talk about a little bit about my experience. And I remember distinctly in middle school, there was one of my classmates had a birthday party, and we all went to her house and played, we did other stuff too, but then after dinner, we played Werewolf. And I was like, this is different from anything I've ever played. And, and so I told my mom about it. She bought it for me for Christmas, and we played it with my uncle and all them. Mm-hmm. And, my uncle's really big into board games now too. And so that was it was a big hit.
Yeah.
And then...
More than Catchphrase?
What? The Catchphrase was a popular one
That was one I really remember playing.
Yeah.
We played it with neighbors, friends, family.
Yeah.
Catchphrase was a big one.
We played that one so much because it used to come in the little disc that had the paper.
Yeah, paper instead of the electronic one.
We played it so much, me and my sister could start to memorize what was coming. Once you got a clue, it's oh, I know the next 3 coming. And so it was But yeah, and then so Werewolf, and then my uncle got me Ticket to Ride, which was a different type of game. And then in college, just on a whim, my buddies and I, we really liked Game of Thrones. And so I saw this Game of Thrones board game because we liked playing Monopoly with each other. Like, there was one chemistry class where we just played Monopoly on Pogo.com with each other. Like, we sat in the back and just, yeah. Anyways, but I bought Game of Thrones. It came in, and we sat down, tried to learn the rules, and it was very complicated. And we got a ton of rules wrong, I'm sure. But we were like, this feels like Game of Thrones. This is the feeling we get when we're, watching Game of Thrones. And so, yeah.
No, I remember y'all playing that. I definitely do. That was when I was more against board games, honestly, because that game lasts 8, 9, 10 hours sometimes.
It can.
It can. It definitely is a 5-hour game.
Yeah.
But Ticket to Ride stands out. We played that in college, and that was the first time I had ever played a game other than, the traditional ones that I had listed.
Yeah.
You can see Ticket to Ride right there. We've expanded to the Europe and Italy and Japan maps.
Yeah.
They all do something a little bit different than the traditional Ticket to Ride. But the traditional one was a great place to start, and that was definitely something that kept me wanting more. But honestly, I was more resistant to games like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this is...
And I started to, and I knew that, and, that was like when we were engaged, or almost engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to start incorporating, like, games that you would like. And so I think Matt and Sarah introduced Stick and Tan, we played that, and then Pandemic, The Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, all those.
Oh, yeah, I
That's
forgot
when
about
I got those.
Yeah, Forbidden Desert. I mean, that was the first time we really played a collaborative,
cooperative game.
Cooperative. What am I saying? Yeah, cooperative board game. And I really liked Ticket to Ride. Sorry, I can't think. I really liked Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert.
Yeah.
When you introduced those, so we still have those. Our kids sort of, kind of play them, but not really. They're not quite there yet on those.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else. So when we also first started playing board games, we were really into like party or bigger group board games.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you go about finding some of those? Because you always brought in new social deduction type games and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to podcasts, I watch YouTube videos and things like that, the Dice Tower, and then Matt got me into Secret Cabal and all of them. Those are all podcasts that focus on, board games. I remember we went to a board game, I guess it was a board game party with Matt and Sarah, and we did Code Names. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, it's, go-to party game if you don't have Code Names, but... Yeah, it was really cool, and then it's just, how do you explore from that? It's like, okay, we played Codenames 8 billion times, let's try something different. It's like, Werewolf, Mafia, all those. Well, then there was Resistance.
Yeah, I was going to say the Avalon game.
Yeah,
we
and
really
Secret
played
Hitler.
that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even Bang the Dice game or regular Bang. Because we
Yeah,
had the regular one first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had regular Bang first, and I think we played it one night, and I think both of us were like, man, this game's going on a really long time. I feel like it outstayed its welcome is like the term people use. It's fun, but it's drawn on, and so
Well, and when you're out, it's like you don't really have anything else to do, so then you're just waiting on the game to end, and you're just kind of like an observer at that point. So I do kind of remember sometimes that, dragging out. But yeah, I mean, that was really like the early game days involved a lot of you trying to find more things that interest me and like party games, because we had more time to like play games with more people than we do now.
Yeah.
Now it's like just me and you.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah, so looking at nowadays, because you are pretty big into board games now too.
Yeah.
What, I guess, was the turning point for you in that journey? Because before when we were playing Game of Thrones, Spartacus and stuff, you were against him, and then what was the turning point that got you to where we are now?
2020?
2020?
Yeah. That's when I really started looking at games on my own without you being the initiator of like a game just showing up to our house and he'd be like, "Hey, I got this," you know. And there were several where I'd be like, "Oh, that actually looks really cool. Like, I want to play that," you know. But I think it was like the early pandemic days that I started really looking at more board game content, and obviously we were buying more board games then because we weren't going anywhere or spending any money on anything else. And so I was like, okay, let's try. Like, I do remember one of the very first games that sucked me in during the pandemic time was Wingspan. That was one I really wanted on the list. Do you remember any more that I talked about? Because I know we got a lot of games that year.
Tekenyu, Teotihuacan, all those, which I'm glad because I remember when Teotihuacan came out, everybody was talking about how cool it was, how fun it was, and I was like, that looks really good, but it doesn't look like something. Like, looking at the cover, I'm like, I don't think Michelle would play this with me. And that was when I had to really think about games. Like, if I'm buying this, how am I going to pitch it to Michelle? It has to be, kind of cool. Like, I remember when Tapestry came out, and I was like, it's a Civilization game, which I don't know is exactly up her alley, but it has these really cool buildings, and maybe she'll think that's cool. And so, yeah.
I also remember picking out Isle of Cats, like wanting that one that year.
Yeah.
Because I think I got that for my birthday, like 30th, which was 2020.
Yeah.
Isle of Cats was something I saw and really was like, okay, I can play that. That looks really good. Even My City, that's another one that we got towards the end of that year.
Yeah.
Can you think of like because I know Azul. We had Azul early on.
Mm-hmm.
Before I probably even initiated, you were like, oh, we need to get this. It's won some family award game of the year.
Yeah, that was your one Spiel des Jahres game of the year. And I was looking at Sagrada in that game. I was like, I don't know which one to get. And I don't know why I went with Azul, but it won game of the year. And so I was like, I'm going to go with Azul. And then we ended up getting Sagrada too, because I was like, it just looks really cool. It looks really pretty. But yeah, that was like game of the year. You got to play it. And you played it, and you liked it.
Yeah.
And that was...
We played Azul a whole lot that year.
Yeah.
2019, 2020.
Yeah. Might have been 18, 19, but yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
But, my next question for you is, now that you're in it, what are elements in games that catch your eye, that make you want games? Because I'm not the, doorway to you getting games anymore. You see a game and you're like, hey, look at this game, I really want this game. And before it was, you didn't even see the games until I brought them.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Oh, goodness. Sometimes it's player count a lot, like, because I really want to know, okay, is it, 2, 4, so that's kind of like a boring way to think of it. But
That's a big deal too. That's something I used to look for, and I still look for, is how does it play at 2 players, and how does the solo mode look? Was before you got into board games, I was really big into solo games, and now I typically play Marvel Champions. Maybe I'll break out Spirit Island solo, but that's generally about it. And before, it was like I would play Scythe solo. Anything that had a solo mode, I was trying to play it, and usually playing a lot. But 2-player games, I always check to see, is Michelle going to like it? Because you're not very confrontational in board games.
Yeah.
Oh,
am I in non-board games?
No, but...
yeah, I would say definitely something where you can stay in your own lane and you're not forced to like go head to head all the time.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I'm not a huge Funko Pop. I mean, sometimes it's fine, but I don't know, really got to be in the mood, because to just like head to head type of game is not really my like first choice. I like things where you can like have your own board too and be building on something, but like there's still like a main board that everyone's working on as well. And then I really like anything where there's like dice drafting that's involved. Probably more than deck building. I would say deck building is lower on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, yeah.
So, thinking about deck building, and hopefully not getting too off a tangent. So, we
Yeah,
used
this
to
is
play.
our early gaming, so we want to sort of stay on that.
Yeah, because we played Dominion
Oh yeah.
a pretty good bit when it.
First came out, I did like Dominion a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if it was when it first came out or we just discovered it, but I remember we bought it, we played it, and we played it with Matt and Sarah. They went and bought a copy and played it. They played it with their William and Leisha, their family, and they went and bought a copy. It was chain reaction. It was funny. But
Well, and we played that one a lot, and I do feel like that one lost its replayability a little bit.
yeah,
But it's also because it was early in our gaming days, so we probably only had 10 to 15 games, maybe.
yeah. Well,
And it was good at 2.
yeah, it was. And it's a very pure deck builder where we have things like Lost Ruins of Arnak now and Dune Imperium that are their deck building plus worker placement.
Yeah, I would
know?
even consider, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. It's Concordia. It's
Yeah.
it's got a deck building
Little bit,
element to
yeah.
it, but it has a lot more as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a board and stuff to it. And so it's deck building just deck building kind of seems vanilla when you compare it to like those. It kind of evolved into something else. But,
Oh, I know another. I really like tile placement, where I'm like creating some sort of, I don't know, design or kingdom or amusement park. Where we got, yeah, Meeple Land back there. Like that, I really like those type of games. And that's kind of similar to Isle of Cats as well. Like King Domino, Queen Domino. Oh, I forgot, King Domino.
yeah.
That was a game that I like really, really loved when we first started. And you got that pretty early.
It was pretty early. It was like 2017, 2018, something like that. Yeah.
And that one was when we, again, with like Dominion, we played those two a lot over and over
Yeah.
again. And that one was definitely like, okay, I like more like this. And then you got Queen Domino. And it's like, okay, yeah, I like this too.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. It does.
How, let's see, because I know you do like some confrontation. So how did you go about looking for games? Like, how did you balance looking for games when you do like that and I don't?
Well, a lot of it was, I don't know, trial and error. Because, I do remember buying games and thinking, oh, it's a great 2-player game. Like, it's listed as one of the best 2-player games. And we're playing it, and, you're like, I don't really like that game. And I'm like, oh, why don't, and I started to see a pattern in, like Onitama, things like that. It's like, I'm taking your pieces off the board. I'm attacking you. And even like to a degree, like Seven Wonders Duel, which we do like, which I think you like.
Yeah. We've had that one a long time too.
Yeah. Which, that one, it's kind of like, I am attacking you. You have to, if you don't fight back, you lose, basically.
But I'm still building my own thing.
Yeah.
And, in Onitama, you're not building anything.
Yeah.
In Funko, you're not building anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. If that's the only component, I'm not as big of a fan. But if there's other things going on,
Yeah.
like even in Scythe, Scythe is not my favorite game still to this day. But I've played it and I'll play it because you're still working on something else.
Yeah.
And you can kind of avoid fighting people, or, if you do fight them, it's not that intense.
Yeah, Scythe's more of like there's a threat of combat, but even like, it's kind of like real life. No one really wants to fight, but there's always the threat of it.
Yeah.
And that's like the tension, It's like, it could happen, but yeah. So just trying different games and seeing, okay, Michelle doesn't like this type of game, and it just kind of, you like the games where you're building more up. You might like more of they call it like the Euro style games, where you're trying to build a bunch of points. You also don't like games that have low scores, like Dune Imperium only goes to 10 points, and Spartacus only goes to like 12 points, and
Yeah, but those are games where you can like get to 9 and then someone like knocks you back down. And sometimes getting to that 9 is so hard. It's like too hard. It's like nothing should take this much effort in a board game, but it does. And then you're like, cool, I spent 2 hours trying to get there and you just knocked me down in 5 minutes. There's no balance.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like those games. It's like Spartacus and Dune Imperium. And even Game of Thrones. Someone can like come from underneath you and like swipe you after you've worked so hard, taking hours.
That's true.
Those three.
It's true.
Tough world out there.
But I don't know. So avoiding combat, sort of, and stuff where you're building, and then games where you score points throughout the game, like Ethnos. Ethnos is one I was super surprised you liked because I bought 2 games. I bought Clank and Ethnos, and I was like, Michelle's gonna love Clank because it looked whimsical and stuff. And Ethnos, it looks kind of ugly, but it plays like Ticket to Ride, and everybody says it's good. And then you really liked Ethnos, and you were like, I don't get Clank, let's get rid of it. And so it's just funny that, yeah.
It's true. It's a good story there, yeah. I forgot Ethnos was an older game that we've had for a while, too.
Yeah, and Ethnos is you're competing on a map and you're trying to control different areas. It's not exactly a war game. You're not fighting, but you're trying to build up presence in areas.
Yeah, and you're collecting different types of cards in order to do that. Just like Ticket to Ride, like collecting certain colors, but you're collecting certain mythical creatures.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so for a new board gamer to the hobby, what 3 games would you say that they need to have? This is like on the spot too.
Yeah, no. Can we like stop it and do
We can.
Okay, so my top 3 for new board gamers or people getting into the hobby. I would say we mentioned Ethnos. Ethnos or Ticket to Ride, same idea, but I think Ethnos is better because there's more variety and yeah. My second one would be something like Sagrada, because it's dice drafting. You're building a pretty stained glass window. It's, like I said, pretty. And the last one, I would have to say, this is kind of a toss-up because it depends on, and this list depends on, like, who's your audience. Like, if it's a couple like us, I would say something like Seven Wonders Duel or Dice Throne, something that's head-to-head. And if you like throwing dice, get Dice Throne. If you like drafting cards, more of a like a Euro-y thing, get Seven Wonders Duel. But if you're a family or something like that, I would say get Downforce. It's a race car game. Everybody loves racing, and you're just playing cards. It's very simple to learn, and it's always a lot of fun, and it's 2 to 6 players. So
those are really good suggestions.
Thanks.
I like how you can split the last recommendation too based on
we never play dice or Downforce as 2 players.
Right.
So.
But anytime we get together with other groups, we always play it, typically. Okay.
What are yours?
All right. So my 3 in no particular order, are Azul, base game Azul, Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I'm going to have to say King Domino.
Oh, that's a good one too.
I think those 3, and those also work for couples, for families. Obviously depends a little bit on like the age of your kids. We'll have another video later that kind of breaks down our take on board games with like different ages of kids based on the experience that we've had so far with our own and like family members.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really great starting list.
That is. I think if you combine both of them, it's perfect.
Yeah, solid recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up our video on our early gaming days and then some of our suggestions for games that you could start with if you are trying to get more into the hobby.
Yeah. Until next time, I'm Zach.
And I'm Michelle.
And this has been A Couple Games.